Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are doing great. If you're new here, my name is Dana. I am a homeschooling mama of 4 little ones, and just so you get an idea of where I am at in my homeschooling journey, this coming fall will be my 5th year homeschooling, and I'm going to be having a 3rd grader, a 2nd grader, a preschooler, as well as my baby will be 2. So she'll be very involved in all of the homeschool things. Anyways, as you can tell from the title down below, today I'm going to be giving you guys a complete look and flip through of the 5 in a row nature studies. This is the spring and summer. They also have a fall and winter one, which they actually do reference multiple times in here. So if you have done the fall and winter one, a lot of those same resources, specifically the Handbook of Nature Study, is mentioned quite a few times in this. So I would say grab the Handbook of Nature Study and then you can use that in this and have a complete standalone thing. It is laid out a little bit differently than the original 5 in the row volume. So I thought I would open both of these books, compare and contrast a little bit, maybe share some pros and cons of how this is laid out versus this and vice versa. But alongside of the original 5 in a row volume and the 5 in a row nature study, I'm also going to be comparing a little bit of the gentle and classical sequence 1, or not the sequence 1, the nature thing that is within it. We'll get to that later, but I wanted to compare all 3 because I know within different families and different parenting styles and homeschool and mama styles, I wanted to share a little bit of a different look at both so you can choose what might work best for your family if, again, you are looking for a standalone type of a nature unit study to do with your little ones. I am thoroughly loving this. We did this morning, actually. So when we do the flip through, I'm going to show you exactly what we did today, what we read, some pros and cons I've noticed so far, mostly pros, and then the read alouds that we did do along with it to really make the learning come to life, as well as just some outdoor exploration that we also did this morning alongside of this to really help implement those type spring feels and ideas when it comes to the 5 in a row nature study. But with all that being said, I am going to go ahead and grab the camera and we are going to get an in-depth look and a comparison at kind of all 3 of these units, and then we're going to come back at the end and I'm going to kind of share my final thoughts on what I think is not necessarily the best, because I don't really like sharing what the best is because every family is so unique and beautiful and different. I never really like sharing what the best is because what my opinion might seem as the best, it might not be for you. And anyway, but I will share, like I said before, those pros and cons of each of them. Anyway, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into looking at all of these wonderful unit study resources. So I thought we'd go ahead and just do a complete flip through of, again, the 5 in a row nature studies spring and summer. I'm going to go ahead and just flip through the entire thing, and then we're going to go back to the beginning and we're going to talk about just some comparisons, again, between this, the original 5 in a row volume, and then the gentle and classical nature unit. So we're going to kind of compare and contrast a few different pros and cons of each one. But before we do that, I did want to give you a complete look at what's inside the spring and summer nature study from 5 in a row. So in the nature study unit, the first 26 pages is going to be all tips for you as a parent. So tips for successful nature walks, for journaling, some nature study resources to grab on hand, tools that you might enjoy and having in your home for nature study, and then field guides and everything like that that you might want to pick up in order to make this curriculum really get the full benefit from it. And then you go straight into the spring and then straight into the summer. I like having the full glimpse of what this is because you can jump around with this. You do not have to start in the beginning and go through. Same with the summer. Once you hit the summer months, you can pick and choose whatever it is that your kids are interested in. Your nature journaling overview, so tips for your student, nature journaling for all ages. I love that it takes you goes all the way from the little years to the tips for your senior high students as well. So this really is for all grade levels. So tips for successful nature walks in the spring. So your nature study and journaling resources for all seasons. So this is a wonderful book resource list, but they are also optional. Unlike the original volume of 5 in a row, where your books that you do your unit studies with are a necessity to complete the unit, they have all of their picture books and all of the optional resources, a complete optional thing. So we're going to get into that later after we do the complete look. So we have the study resources again, some more books that you can grab. So if you've done 5 in a row before, this is going to give you some titles that you might have used already and you might already have on hand. Then you go into your summer study resources. Again, if you have done the volumes from 5 in a row, you might already have these on hand. And it gives you like books of poetry. It gives you some tips for what types of tools to look for when viewing nature. So what type of like high quality things that you might want to grab when it comes to your homeschool. So then we go into microscopes. Then we go into your field guides and what that might look like for all the different seasons. And it gives you a very detailed look. So if you don't know where to begin when it comes to choosing a good high quality field guide, this will be a wonderful guide for you to use, because the books that they recommend, I've seen a lot of them in person, and so they do a very, very good job in recommending those books. So after all the tips and the tricks and the resources on the first part here, you're then ready to jump into the actual spring study. So it starts out with is the spring coming, he said, what is it like? It is the sun shining on the rain and the rain falling on the sunshine. So you're going to read a little bit about just the excitement of a new season coming, especially spring and all the renewal and everything that comes with it. And then the first section, again, you can jump around on this part based on what your kiddos are interested in, but it starts out with creatures in the spring. So you have one section for animals. And if you're familiar with 5 in a row, the original 5 in a row volumes, the purpose of the 5 in a row volumes here is to read the picture book. You're going to read it a minimum of a week. You're going to read it in its entirety every single day for 5 days in a row, hence the 5 in a row. And then every single day you're going to add on something else. So you're going to be learning either geography or music or art or science. Something new every single day you read the book. So that's what 5 in a row kind of is in a nutshell, where you really are doing it 5 days in a row. Every single day you're adding on a new building block. The reason why I wanted to mention that in particular is it is a little bit different than the original 5 in a row thing, where you're not really having to do a certain book 5 days in a row. Now you can say creatures in spring. So if you want to do the creatures, you could break it up over a day, or I'm sorry, over a week. So you would start out the first day, say Monday, you could do animals. On Tuesday, you could do the insects. Wednesday, you could learn about birds. And then Thursday, you could learn about even nests if you want to break that up. Friday, you could do eggs all in the same day, or you could break it up, or you could combine it even more. Then you would have reptiles, amphibians, snails, and slugs. So you could break all of the actual creatures in spring up into however many days you want, but there's no set guide for really doing that 5 days in a row. It's just you're kind of picking what you want to do within those days. So that comes into the second week. Let's just call it the second week. We had the trees and plants in spring, where you go through the mushrooms and algae. You have rocks in spring, so you're going to go through a whole little section here on rock. And then you have the weather in spring. I'm excited about this one because my kiddos are always interested in the weather and what the weather is doing. So we'll be excited about this one. And then, of course, all the different clouds when it comes talking about the weather. And then we'll go into skies, so your spring skies. And then we'll have, at the end here, we'll have poetry for spring. So after all the actual nature facets, whether it be critters, trees, plants, rocks, weather, everything that's going on in nature in the spring, you then go into what is poetry for the spring. So you go into some beautiful poetry that you can either memorize or recite together in the morning. And there's quite a few options, which I love for that. So April rain, lo, the winter is past. You have some scripture memory verses in here as well. The mending wall, I remember doing this one when I was a kid. From a hillside thaw, that one is wonderful. So a lot of just beautiful poetry things interwoven throughout it as well. Then you go into some spring quotes that you can also memorize. And honestly, these are just really fun to either print out or to write on a chalkboard to really celebrate kind of the renewal of spring. Then you go into discovering the spring palette. So art and artists for spring. You start studying different artists and what kind of things that they created. So you drawing bouquets in the spring, artists for spring. So all the different beautiful colors using that palette. Water lilies, the lilacs in the window. And then you go into the music for spring. So the summer is laid out just like this as well, where you have your actual study as far as your nature studies, and then you go into all the extra things. So then we have caring for the earth, our home. So God created and it was good, and he took pleasure in his creation. Then you have some activities, different optional activities you can do. And I love that it also has a really in-depth look at spring and our relationship with God, what that might look like, with, again, poetry and scripture woven into this really beautifully done devotional. And I love that they do that as well. So, for great is your love, higher than the heavens, your faithfulness reaches to the skies, and shout with joy to God, all the earth. So, really giving all credit to God as a creator who made nature to begin with. And then it comes into the 5 senses in spring. This is going to be fun because I was thinking what we would do when it comes to this is we would actually go to we have a lot of state parks around us, so we would going to go there and honestly just do a hike and write down all the sounds, if we find things to taste, smell, touch, and then what we see as far as experiencing all the 5 senses. Think on these things from the archives, and these are just some extra little things to think about when it comes to spring. And then we come to pages for creative journaling experiences. As I mentioned in the beginning part of this book, it is full of information on how to nature journal and has all kinds of tips for how to do that with every single age of kiddos in your family. But this is just, again, some different pages to keep in mind. So signs of spring, this would be an example page of what your student might be able to draw when it comes to different things that they see in the spring. In the back, now they do give permission in the front of this to photocopy all of these pages. So no matter how many kiddos you have, you can easily photocopy these and not write in the book. And then you can honestly utilize this for your entire homeschool experience if you don't write in it, because you can use it over and over again. So you have the signs of springs. Again, you can photocopy that and write it down below. I actually enjoy all these little squares here versus one big page because you can fit a lot of different fun information on that one page. Then you have your rainy day observations, you have your sunny day observations, and then this is the other couple of pages that she says you can photocopy and put it in your own binder. You have your nature journal pages. There's multiple ones of those that you can, again, photocopy and print out for everything. And then you go into your summer. So reading about nature is fine, but if a person walks in the woods and listens carefully, he can learn more than what is in books, for they speak with the voice of God. This has always been one of my favorite quotes when it comes to nature study, and kind of why I love doing it and why I love keeping our bookwork to a minimum. That way the kiddos can actually be outside and really, I guess, just have the flexibility and, more importantly, the free time to actually listen for the voice of God, because it is in the stillness and in the simplicity and in the quiet moments that happens. And so being able to give them the opportunity to hear that voice is one of my main priorities in our homeschool, especially in the summer. So I don't like to be busy and do all the things. I really prefer, seeing them bloom and explore, and really, again, having that quietness outside. So that's one of my favorite quotes when it comes to that. So summer nature studies, we start out with the creatures in the summer again, exact same layout as the spring, only you're doing summer themes. So you talk about, again, the animals. We have your little honeybee study, which is what we actually read a little bit today with one of our read alouds. Then we have our butterflies and moths. My kiddos are always outside looking for any type of caterpillar or butterflies, chrysalis, anything related to that. Then our favorite time of the year is firefly season. This is this time of the year where the kiddos will stay up way past 10 till when it's pitch black and they can go catch fireflies. They love it. And I love it because, again, I don't really care too much about the late nights in the summer because it's more laid back and simple. And there's just something about those later summer nights where it's warm out. You can sit out on the porch and watch the little ones catch fireflies. It brings them so much joy. It brings us as a parent so much joy. Watching them have so much joy when it comes to those simple things in life, right? Anyway, I love firefly season. It's one of my favorite times of the year. So for us, it would be around June. Again, all kinds of other insects, what might be out in the summer. Again, you have some more reptiles and amphibians, one of my son's all-time favorite subjects, so he's going to love that again. He ended up finding a bunch of salamanders on a recent trip of ours, and he's been taking very good care of them. But they made it all the way home, surprisingly, and he has like a dozen of them now. Anyway, we go into the trees and plants in summer, gardens and the flowers in summer, how to use the plants of summer, and then we go into rivers, ponds, and in the summer, this is one of our favorite hangout places anyway, is by a river or by a pond. We will spend hours just letting the kids kind of creek stomp and hunt for all kinds of critters, and they just love that. So then we go to, again, lakes, marshes, oceans, and tide pools, which will be fun because we're going to be going to Florida later this year. So it'll be fun to show the kids the ocean, because our 2 older kiddos have been, but not our youngest. So that's going to be really, really fun to take them this year. So in the back here, they have life lists of birds. Again, you could photocopy this and put it in a 3-ring binder to go along with your other kind of study materials. But you have your date, the bird name, and the location, weather, notes, whatever you would like. And this is another option for if your kiddos are little. If you don't want all the information but want a big list, you can photocopy that one. We also have the life list of trees and the life list of insects. One thing that I wanted to mention that I wasn't really fully aware of when I bought this curriculum is, for one, I'm a huge fan of 5 in a row. Again, we did the first volume, completed all of the books that came with it, absolutely loved it. And in all transparency, and I should have done my own research when it came to doing the nature study, is I honestly was expecting the nature study to be laid out as one of the volumes where you take a book, you read it 5 times, you're digging more into it. So what I was kind of expecting was I was expecting to have a list of books. So for example, the honeybee, and I was expecting, we would read it, maybe 5 days in a row, just like the original 5 in a row curriculum. And then every single day we would add on to it. Or same thing with like the seasons book here that is also part of the suggested book list, is I was expecting to kind of have a pile of books and then this be the core, kind of like the 5 in a row, where, for example, when we read about the story about Ping is one of my kiddos' all-time favorite books. So when we opened this up, we would do 5 in a row. So we read Ping 5 times in a row. And every single day we learn something different, whether that be social studies, culture, fiction, your arts, composition, so reflection of light, so science, math, all kinds of wonderful things. And there'd be little tidbits of information. So every single day you read the story, you would add on another piece of information. Like really, I love the way 5 in a row does that, because it covers all of the subjects that I don't really cover as a formal curriculum, which is why I love the original volumes. However, this is very different. It gives you a book list of book resources as an optional thing, but you don't actually do this 5 times in a row. So if you're expecting it to be like the original volumes, I did want to mention that it is very different, and that is a pro and con. So this has a lot of structure to it. Again, you have the book, you're opening it, you're reading it 5 times, you're picking what you want to learn for that day. So on the day that you do science, you can do animal kingdom, buoyancy, health or safety, or the reflection of light. You can kind of pick what you want to do. So this is very different. It gives you almost, in my opinion, it gives you 100% freedom when it comes to what you want to learn about. Which again has its pros and cons. If you're wanting something extremely structured and open and go, it might not be the best option for your family, but I did want to mention it in case, again, you are expecting it to be just like the 5 in a row. The reason why I'm going to say that this can be a pro for your family is when you have the creatures in spring. So you're going to read a little bit about it, and this is another thing that I struggle a little bit when it comes to the actual unit study here. I'm just going to go ahead and read it so you can see what I mean. So I would going to go ahead to the animals here, and I was going to read to the kiddos. So one of the first signs of spring, where we live in the Midwest, it can be as early as late February, is dead skunks on the road. So I was reading this out loud to the kiddos. So sometimes a skunk odor is what prompts us to look for these animals even before we spot them. After the second sighting of a dead skunk within a few days, we remember, oh, it's spring. So why is this so? It is in the spring we see these animals, even though it's along the side of the road and almost never any other time. Why again? Good question. And so it has a little bit of a script for the student, but then the next part is, well, your older student can actually find some of the answers to this question herself, which is a little research. So you're not going to be opening this and reading information and then going off to do your own thing. It jumps around a lot. So it gives you a little bit of information that you could read to your kiddos, but then it jumps down here and tells you what you could do. And then it goes back to being scripted. Now, in the winter, they are also quieter and slowed down due to the lack of food supply in the cold. They are not absolute hibernators because they wake up during warm spells. So skunks are considered only dormant in the areas with cold winters. But in the spring, they become quite active and start looking for a mate. So again, it gives you information on the skunk, but then the next paragraph here, in the 5 in a row winter nature study, we explained a good way to use the Handbook of Nature Study. So now is a great time to take that Handbook of Nature Study and look up skunk to continue on the information. So in this large handbook, and then it goes on to give you information about that handbook, you know, whenever you have nature lessons in the nature studies. So it gives you more information about the lesson, but not a lot of information on the, let's say, animals or the creatures in spring. It was a little bit confusing for me because I know that the original volume does this as well, where it is not 100% scripted. It really is your guide as the mama to really teach that with your kiddos. So I did want to mention that. So it's not going to be a open and just share little tidbits of information. It is, you're going to really need some extra resources to learn about what this is. So this really is going to be a beautiful guide to help you be intentional about nature study, but I would not say it's an all exclusive, like standalone nature guide at all. I would definitely recommend you would get the Handbook of Nature Study, which I love. If your kiddos love nature, or if you are a fan of doing nature study in your homeschool, highly recommend that book. I'll see if I can link it down below for you. It's a really, really thick book. Like it's a huge book. Everything you could ever imagine plus more is in there when it comes to nature. It's like the biggest encyclopedia. If your kids have a question about anything to do with anything God created, it's in there. It's amazing. Anyway, so it goes back and forth between having the tidbit of information that you could read aloud, but then it jumps into, you know, instruction and what you could do. And so it is mixed up. So it's similar to the original volumes as far as not being scripted. But I just wanted to highlight that in case you were thinking that this is just something that you could read and then move on. It's really giving you instruction. Another example of this would be, so other spring mammal activity. So some more information on what some other animals might be doing. And then some more. So spring is a time for fawns, zipping coyote babies, bouncing baby bunnies, lambs, ducklings, and so much more. So what can your student see where she lives? So even in the city, there are spring babies to be found. So if you live in an urban or suburban area, now is a good time to think about taking a trip to a petting zoo or a local farm to see the babies there. So in your outdoor ramblings, if your student finds an animal that interests her, encourage her to research what the animal is doing in the spring and add this to her journal. So again, this is acting as a guide to help you as a mama help your children in their nature study. And I'm going to go ahead and say this as another pro or con, again, depending on your family. But for me, it's a little bit of a pro because I can really hone in to exactly what animal they either want to learn about, what they are interested in kind of diving into. If we have a bunch of deer in our yard, we can dive into that one specific animal, what are their habits in the spring, etc. So them kind of giving you a guide and kind of a starter to what to ask your kids, what to do with your children. And it really does help guide your children into how to do nature study, how to observe, how to listen, how to watch, and things like that. So I just want to mention that it's not a straight scripted thing where you're going to open the book again and get all your information from it. I would definitely get a Handbook of Nature Study. And the reason why I think the resources in the beginning, the books that they recommend are really useful, is we did this season's book this morning with that first little bit. And I loved it. It really did help the first little part come to life as far as being excited about the spring and what happened in the spring. And we actually have a giant oak tree right outside our window. So this is really, really fun for the kiddos to go through the mighty oak. We saw what our oak tree is doing in the spring. So we studied that and then we flipped it over and like, well, this is what we had to look forward to. All the wonderful life that's going to be in it in this summer. So this was a really fun add-on. I would definitely recommend all of their picture books or kind of seasonal books that they recommend doing in the 5 in a row. I actually do recommend picking them up because no, it's not laid out like the original 5 in a row curriculum, but they do enrich it beautifully. And we also read the honeybee book this morning as well. And we went out to our pear trees and we stood under it and just listened to all the buzzing bees. So this really did help bring to life that whole essence of spring. We also read The Secret Stream, which I've shared on my channel the past couple of times. Again, all of these books are wonderful to make that learning about spring come to life. And as we get into our summer, I'll be pulling out our other books that I got specifically for this curriculum to make the summer seasons kind of come to life as well. So that was a look at the 5 in a row Nature Studies Spring and Summer. And then again, compared it a little bit to the original 5 in a row. One thing I wanted to compare as well is let me go grab my nature study from Gentle and Classical. One second. So I wanted to grab the Gentle and Classical. I have the nature study. Let me go back here. I have the Gentle and Classical Nature. This is the volume 1. Yeah, so Inland Waterways and Forests. The reason why I wanted to share this with you is, as I mentioned in the 5 in a row nature studies, this is going to be your guide of how to really dive in deep to nature study with your children. It's going to just be, again, a beautiful guide for your family, so you can kind of customize it to be however you want it to be, which is amazing. But if you're wanting something completely 100% open and go, where your information that you're reading is all inclusive, as well as the activities and everything, then I would definitely recommend Gentle and Classical, their nature units. So for example, your unit 1 here, this whole page is going to be things that you can read out loud. It's going to be all about amphibians, so your little nature nuggets. And then your second page, again, all about amphibians, and it goes into like your activities and everything like that. The reason why I wanted to share this one in particular is, let me grab the the teacher guide for this, is unlike 5 in the row, where this is going to be again a wonderful guide to take you along the way. The Gentle and Classical, the nature study, it gives you the meat of the curriculum, or the meat of what you're learning about in read aloud form within the student guide. But the actual additional book menu, your Explore More, your core books, and your read alouds, this is all kind of separate. So if you want to do this massive, huge dive in to everything that you could ever learn about when it comes to reptiles and amphibians, a wonderful, wonderful way. I think this is the wrong unit, it might be back here. Yeah, wrong one. This is a wonderful way to do that, because it gives you your core books, which is going to be the core of what you're reading for this unit 1, so your week 1, for example. And then it's going to have a whole nother bunch of like your book menus. So it's your optional, but then you have your core books, you have your Explore More, all of your different optional activities. But this is a separate teacher thing, so it's not interwoven into one. It's not a standalone thing where you have your meat and your beef, but it's separated a little bit. So you have your core, you do have the information within that student guide down here that you read out loud, but your optional things are separate. Like, it's not in a core part of the student guide, but you can really choose and pick how much you want to come alive. So I wanted to mention that, it being a good option if you want to be complete open and go, whereas in this is going to be more of a guide to help you know how to research with your family. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed seeing a look at the 5 in the row Nature Studies curriculum. This is one I'm very excited about, mostly because I'm excited to make my kiddos excited, but to also learn about doing nature study and to learn all the different methods and all the different ways that you can do it. There is no one correct way, or there's no wrong way in doing a nature study, because a lot of it is just self-observation. It's kind of what you see with your eyes might be different than what your sibling sees with their eyes, and it's just comparing and contrasting, being in God's creation and really observing everything that He has made and praising Him for everything that He has made. So I love it as a guide. Again, it's beautiful. However, as I mentioned in my little flip through area here, is that the Gentle and Classical is a more of that open and go style, where if you don't really have any idea where to begin and you don't want just a guide, or if you're brand new starting out with nature study, I probably choose something a little more structured. So the Gentle and Classical one is a great option. Another one that we have really done and we've really enjoyed that is very comparable to Gentle and Classical, and that is the Gather Round curriculum, and Campfire curriculums is also an incredible one for if you're wanting a very guided with a very also scripted teacher part. So you're reading aloud to the kiddos, then the kiddos are doing like their workbook things alongside of you. So that would be another option. I really enjoyed the North American Birds unit study from Gather Round, as well as their insects. So I think it's called Creepy Crawlies. We really did enjoy that one. I think in hindsight, looking back, I would have waited a year to do that one because it was a little bit more advanced for what my kiddos were ready for as far as the student workbook. However, the teacher part of it, which is another option as well, if you want a guide as a parent, then I would just get the teacher guide from Gather Round and have the kids kind of follow along, and then you can do the extracurriculars, do the read alouds, whatever you want to do alongside of it. But that's going to give you the full-on script. So if you have, again, no idea where to start, I would definitely recommend doing a scripted type unit study versus a guide. But if you are a seasoned homeschooler or a seasoned nature study fan, or have done it with your children in the past, then definitely recommend the 5 in the row, because it's going to give you so much freedom and flexibility when it comes to learning exactly what it is that you want to learn about. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and until my next one, you guys have a great day, whatever you're doing, and God bless. Bye guys.